Tina Brown transformed Vanity Fair into a legendary and provocative tracker of pop culture. The former editor-in-chief was brought in to lead the magazine back in 1983 after it failed to find its voice and struggled to gain advertisers. Her first cover, take a look at this, Blonde Ambition, featuring actress Daryl Hannah, made an edgy statement, you could say, about the publication's future. It was followed by other iconic images, including Madonna, Michael Jackson, Eddie Murphy, and Cher. Brown's first memoir, The Vanity Fair Diaries, pulls back the cover of her time as editor-in-chief of the magazine. She's published her own diary entries from 1983 to 1992. Tina Brown, welcome to the table.
Thank you.
Boy, this is juicy, gossipy, dishy, sexy, and smart.
Finally opening those pages.
You really did. But I think it's interesting that you talk about your life, Tina. When you were in school, you got kicked out of 3 different high schools.
True.
As a kid, and your father blames the high school for failing this very unusual girl.
Yeah, that was what was so great about my father.
Yeah.
Right? He was so proud of having a disruptor as a daughter.
Yeah,
he would go in
at an early age.
Yeah, he would go in and he would say, how sad it must be for you to have failed with this extraordinary girl. And my mother would have their heads held high. They would sweep out.
Let's go, darling.
Let's go, darling. Like, pack your trunk and let's go.
But here you arrive in New York, your very first day. You're not yet 30. And in the cab on the way to your hotel, you hear Dr. Ruth, giving very explicit sexual directions, very graphic sexual act. And you're thinking, what have I gotten myself into when you come to this country? Because it's on the radio.
I'm bumping along, in the cab from JFK with my, case in the back, knowing I'm going to be going into this editorial challenge. And suddenly there's a rasping voice as I'm looking out the window, and I'm thinking, what is this place?
Yeah.
What do they do? What are you listening to?
No, I think you said my kind of town.
My kind of town.
That's really the point. You really wanted to come to New York because this is where it was.
I really did.
You wanted to test yourself.
New York was, for me, coming from London, it was the capital of the action. Yeah. And, I'm a girl of the arena. I like to be in that gladiatorial ring. And if you've been in London for 4 years editing, as I had been, that was exciting, but nothing like being on Broadway, which is what I felt that being in New York City.
Characterize, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to describe that moment, too. I mean, when you decided you wanted to move from being a writer to an editor, you were assigned a story about go-go dancers, right?
I was. And, I mean, it was really at that moment because they asked if I would dance as a go-go dancer to get a sense of, like Gloria Steinem, worked as a bunny.
And did you?
I did. I was Union Jackie, actually. Yeah. And when I got off that dancing, I went back, I thought to myself, I think it's time I made the assignments. I want to be the one to actually tell people what to do. No more of this. I want to be.
So when you see this table, do you think I need to hop up there? But Tina, you weren't 30 yet. That's what's so amazing. You take over Vanity Fair just as you're turning 30. That's extraordinary.
Yeah, it seems young now.
It is young.
I was this kind of, I blazed ahead as a kind of a young Turk. I had had 4.5 years of editing The Tatler in London, and it had been very successful. So that was my sort of learning curve, And when I came to Vanity Fair, I really had a strong vision of what I wanted it to be.
What was that?
It was a sophisticated mix. I felt that American magazines were not combining literature with celebrity, with arts, with business, that I saw it as this sort of gleaming package that was on the front edge of culture, and that it was all about how that would all mix together. So it was always about the search for the mix, the movie star piece, the crime piece, the pop culture piece.
You became famous for the covers, too.
Yes.
What did they do for you, and what was the one that launched it?
Well, the covers were absolutely critical, and the first cover immediately made a statement, the one you showed with the thing, because it actually followed the first, failed editions, which were very sort of pretentious and sort of arty illustrations. I wanted to immediately say, this is glamorous, this is edgy, which, of course, the blindfolded Helmut Newton's wonderful picture.
But then the Reagans?
The Reagans were a critical cover for us. We got access to shoot them at the White House. We went to do that, and I took with me Harry Benson, the great photographer. He was such a brilliant, mischievous mind. He brought with him a boombox, and in the boombox was a tape of Frank Sinatra singing Nancy with the Laughing Face. As the Reagans walked in, he puts on the boombox, and Nancy says, "Let's dance, darling."
I love how she kicked her foot. But if she hadn't liked the pictures, she asked you to come. You had to go to the White House and show her those pictures.
I did.
Because if she didn't like them, you would have to pull the
Because when they kissed, I knew I had the, the spread of a lifetime. Went back to the office, was busy laying it out. Suddenly get the call, Mrs. Reagan needs to approve the pictures. And at first I just hid, And then Cy Newhouse, the chairman, said, you have to show Nancy Reagan the pictures. Send them. I thought, I'm not sending them. I hopped onto the plane, took the shuttle down there and sat there for like 3 hours in the antechamber and finally persuaded them to run.
This is a story about Condé Nast as well. Talk about Cy Newhouse and Alexander Lieberman.
Yeah. Well, Cy Newhouse was the small, quirky, very shy Roman emperor, if you like, whose company it was. So he was the only really person that mattered, but he was also a very reluctant sort of power chief in a sense, which is what made him very beguiling. Had a strong instinct, very mercurial, but he really knew what he wanted, and he appreciated editors and appreciated magazines. Alexander Lieberman, his editorial director, was this very, very cultured, a great artist himself, knew everybody from sort of Picasso to, you know, Diana Vreeland. He was the culture, the style, you know, the editorial taste. My dear, you know, he had this little moustache, a Douglas Fairbanks moustache, and the two of them had this dynamic where you had to somehow negotiate the politics between them.
They'd never seen anybody like you.
What's the challenger for the new editor, Radhika Jones?
Well, I think it's a completely different company now.
Yeah.
It was a much more personal company then because Cy Newhouse was so personally involved with magazines, and editorial director Alex has, of course, gone. It's more of a corporation now, but they have Anna Wintour, who's, you know, a fabulous editorial director who is there, and David Remnick, of course, at the New Yorker. So they are the sort of guiding spirits now of Condé Nast. And I think Radhika Jones will be a terrific choice. She's young, you know, which I like. She's very literary. She has intellectual rigor, and I think she's going to bring a new broom, actually, to the whole situation.
A new broom.
A new broom.
Tina Brown, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And the Vanity Fair Diaries is on sale today.